I never thought a simple buonasera would change my life forever. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcello's, each droplet racing down the glass like tears I'd long stopped shedding. The restaurant hummed with its usual Friday night chaos. The clinking of silverware against bone china, the murmur of conversations cushioned by old money and new ambitions. The sharp bark of Chef Laurent demanding perfection in the kitchen. I moved through it all like a ghost, my worn sneakers silent against the polished marble floors, my black uniform pressed but faded from too many wash cycles, my hair pulled back so tightly it made my scalp ache. I was invisible here, just another waitress in a city full of them, serving people who never looked at my face, only at their plates. My fingers trembled as I balanced the tray of champagne flutes, the crystal catching the amber light of the chandeliers overhead. Exhaustion lived in my bones now, a permanent resident that had moved in 3 years ago when Marco walked out, leaving me with a mountain of his debts, and a daughter who asked why Daddy didn't love us anymore. I'd worked double shifts every day since then, my feet swollen and bleeding by midnight, my tips barely covering Sophia's daycare, and the interest on loans I never signed for. The scent of truffle oil and seared duck filled my nostrils as I navigated between tables, my muscles moving on autopilot. Table 12 needed more water. Table 7 wanted their check. Table 15 was waving me over with the impatient flick of fingers weighted down by diamonds. But it was Table 1 that made the entire restaurant fall silent. I felt it before I saw it. The shift in atmosphere, like air pressure dropping before a storm. Conversation stuttered and died. Forks paused midway to mouths. Even Chef Laurent's shouting ceased, leaving only the rain and the rapid beating of my heart. He entered like darkness given form. The front door opened, and 3 men walked in first. Not walked, prowled. They wore black suits that fit too perfectly, their eyes scanning the room with predatory precision, hands resting near their jackets in a way that made my stomach clench. They were checking exits, counting guests, assessing threats. I'd seen men like this before, in the old neighborhood where I grew up, where my nonna whispered warnings about uomini pericolosi, dangerous men. Then he stepped through the door. The world tilted. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face carved from marble and malice. His suit was charcoal gray, probably worth more than I'd earn in 5 years, tailored to emphasize the power in his frame. A white shirt, open at the collar, revealed a throat marked with shadows. Or were those bruises? Scars? His shoes gleamed like black mirrors, clicking against the floor with the confidence of someone who owned everything he walked upon. But it was his eyes that stole the breath from my lungs. Dark. Calculating. Ancient, somehow. As if they'd witnessed things that would break a normal person's mind. They swept across the restaurant with casual dominance, and every person they touched seemed to shrink, to fold inward, desperate not to be noticed. The maître d', Fernando, who never flustered, who'd once calmly handled a celebrity tantrum, went pale. His hands shook as he grabbed menus. "Signor Salvatore," Fernando stammered, his usual polish cracking. We didn't expect... Is that a problem?" The man's voice was quiet, accent thick with Italian roots, but somehow it carried across the entire restaurant, velvet wrapped around a blade. No, of course not. Right this way, please." Fernando led them toward table 1, the best table, the one we always kept reserved for VIP walk-ins who never came. The bodyguards fanned out, one positioned near the entrance, one near the kitchen, one standing behind the chair where Signor Salvatore sat. And everyone pretended not to watch while watching everything. I stood frozen near the bar, my tray of champagne forgotten, my mind racing. Salvatore. That name echoed in my memory, tangled up with Nonna's warnings and news reports I'd tried not to hear. The Salvatore family controlled half the city's underground, or so the whispers said. Drugs, weapons, protection rackets. Anywhere money flowed through dark channels. Their hands collected a share, and their boss was sitting 20 feet away from me. "Gianna!" Fernando's hiss snapped me back. He rushed over, his face slick with sweat despite the air conditioning. "You speak Italian, yes? Your grandmother..." "Some," I whispered, my throat dry. "Basic phrases. What she taught me." "Good. Enough. You take table 1. My heart stopped. What? No. Fernando, I can't. Every other server has suddenly discovered urgent tasks elsewhere. His laugh was bitter, afraid. You're the only one who hasn't run to the kitchen pretending to be busy, and you're the only one here with Italian blood. Maybe. Maybe he'll appreciate that. I don't want to. Gianna. Fernando gripped my arm, his fingers desperate. His last waiter spilled wine on his sleeve. They found the man in the hospital with 2 broken hands. Please. I have children. The champagne flutes rattled on my tray. My vision blurred at the edges, panic rising like floodwater. But I thought of Sophia, waiting at Mrs. Chen's apartment, probably already asleep with her threadbare stuffed rabbit. I thought of the stack of bills on my counter, the final notices printed in red. I thought of how I had no choice but to be brave when bravery had abandoned me long ago. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay. Fernando nearly sobbed with relief. I approached table 1 the way someone might approach a sleeping lion, slowly, carefully, every muscle tense and ready to flee. The bodyguard behind Signor Salvatore tracked my movement, his hand shifting slightly beneath his jacket. My pulse thundered in my ears, louder than the rain, louder than logic. Up close, he was even more terrifying and more beautiful, in the way a storm is beautiful, dangerous, and utterly mesmerizing. His cologne reached me first, something dark and expensive. Cedar and smoke and something underneath that I couldn't name. Power, maybe. Or violence held carefully in check. He didn't look at me. He was reading his phone, one hand resting on the white tablecloth. Fingers adorned with silver rings that caught the light. I noticed scars on his knuckles, the kind that came from hitting things, or people, repeatedly. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. His eyes lifted, met mine. Time fractured. They were darker than I'd thought, almost black, with depths that seemed to pull at something in my chest. For a moment, just a heartbeat, I saw surprise flicker there, as if my face had triggered some memory, some ghost he thought he'd buried. Then his expression hardened into unreadable stone. Buonasera, signore, I managed, my grandmother's language stumbling off my tongue, rusty but sincere. Benvenuto a Marcello's. Come posso aiutarla questa sera? The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. His bodyguard's hand fell away from his jacket, tension easing fractionally, but Signor Salvatore himself remained perfectly still, studying me with an intensity that made my skin burn. His gaze traced my face, my eyes, my mouth, the nervous flutter of my pulse at my throat. Like he was memorizing me, cataloging me, deciding whether I was a threat or an opportunity. You speak Italian, not a question. An observation, tinged with something I couldn't identify. Un po', I admitted, my fingers white-knuckled around my order pad. A little. My grandmother, she was from Napoli. Something shifted in his expression. So subtle I almost missed it. His jaw tightened. His rings glinted as his fingers curled slightly against the tablecloth. Napoli, he repeated, his accent making the word sound like music and menace combined. And you work here, serving people who don't see you. It wasn't a question, but it felt like an accusation. My cheeks flushed. It's honest work, signore, honest. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Is there such
Only
a thing?
sharp
Edges. Before I could respond, before I could breathe, he leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. What's your name? Every instinct screamed at me to lie, to give him something false, something that would keep my real self hidden and safe. But his eyes held mine with a gravity I couldn't escape, and my grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Never lie to dangerous men, Piccola. They always know, and they never forgive. Gianna, I whispered. Gianna Russo. He tasted my name like wine, rolling it across his tongue. Gianna Russo, who speaks her nonna's Italian and works until her hands shake. How did he notice that? How had he seen what everyone else missed? I'll take the bistecca, he said, switching topics so smoothly I felt dizzy. Rare, and the Barolo, the 08. Of course. I scribbled on my pad, my handwriting barely legible. Anything else? Yes. I looked up. His eyes had gone cold again, businessman replacing whatever brief humanity had flickered there. When you bring my food, you'll sit down. My pen fell from my fingers, clattering against the floor. Signore, I can't. You can. His voice dropped lower, a command wrapped in silk. And you will. I have questions about Napoli, about your grandmother's recipes. You'll answer them. It was insane. Impossible. Waitresses didn't sit with customers, especially not customers surrounded by armed men who made the entire restaurant cower in fear. But the way he looked at me, like I was already his, like my compliance was inevitable, made something in my chest constrict with a fear that felt uncomfortably close to anticipation. I'll ask my manager, I stammered, bending to retrieve my pen with trembling hands. No. The single word stopped me mid-motion. You'll sit. Or would you prefer I buy this restaurant and make it a requirement of your employment? He said it so casually, as if purchasing an entire establishment was no more difficult than ordering wine, and the terrifying thing was, I believed he could do it. Would do it, just to prove a point. Okay, I breathed, straightening up, my mind spinning. Okay, I'll sit. His smile returned, satisfied and predatory. Ben. Now go, Gianna Russo. Bring me what I asked for. I fled to the kitchen on legs made of water, my heart attempting to break through my ribs. Behind me, I felt his gaze following my retreat, heavy and inescapable as a storm cloud. I'd just made a mistake. I knew it in my bones. I'd spoken to him in Italian. I'd given him my real name. I'd agreed to sit at his table, and now, somehow, I belonged to him. The kitchen was chaos incarnate, but I barely registered it. Steam clouded my vision as I pushed through the swinging doors, my skin prickling with residual awareness, as if his eyes were still on me even through walls and distance. Chef Laurent was screaming at a line cook about risotto consistency, his face the color of a ripe tomato, but his voice sounded muted, distant, like I was underwater. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Gianna. Maria, the other dinner waitress, grabbed my elbow, her fingernails digging in. What did you do? What did you say to him? Nothing. I just took his order. The lie tasted bitter. Fernando is having a panic attack in his office. He thinks Salvatore is going to burn the place down because you took too long getting his wine. Her eyes were wide, mascara smudged from stress sweat. Do you even know who that is? Do you have any idea what he's done? I didn't want to know. But Maria told me anyway, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow cut through all the kitchen noise. That's Dante Salvatore, the Dante Salvatore. He runs everything south of the river. The docks, the gambling dens, the protection rackets. 3 years ago, a rival family tried to kill him at his sister's wedding. He walked out with a bullet in his shoulder and left 17 men dead behind him. 17 Gianna, and he did most of it himself. My stomach turned to ice. 6 months ago, Maria continued, her grip tightening, a city councilman tried to launch an investigation into his businesses. They found the councilman's car at the bottom of the harbor with him still inside. And everyone knows it was Salvatore, but no one can prove anything because no one will talk. The ones who might are too terrified, and the ones who aren't terrified are on his payroll. Stop, I whispered, but she didn't. And now he's asking for you specifically. Why would he do that, Gianna? What does he want? I didn't have an answer. The bistecca sat on the pass, perfectly seared, blood pooling around it the exact shade of rare he'd requested. The wine bottle stood beside it, already open to breathe, the vintage so expensive I'd need a month's tips to afford a single glass. What did he want? The question followed me as I arranged everything on the tray with meticulous care. My reflection caught in the stainless steel counter, pale, exhausted, with circles under my eyes like bruises. I looked like what I was, a woman barely surviving, held together by caffeine and stubborn refusal to break. Why would someone like Dante Salvatore notice someone like me? The dining room had regained some of its ambient noise by the time I returned, but it felt performative, like everyone was pretending normalcy while hyper-aware of the predator in their midst. Table 1 remained an island of tension, his bodyguards standing like statues, Dante himself scrolling through his phone with the casual disinterest of someone who knew the world would wait on his convenience. I approached with the tray, my reflection multiplying in the wine glasses, fractured and uncertain. He looked up as I arrived, pocketing his phone with deliberate slowness. Those dark eyes tracked my every movement as I set down his plate, poured his wine with a hand that barely trembled, arranged his silverware just so. Sit. Not a request. I glanced around. Every eye in the restaurant was on us, some pretending to look away, others openly staring. Fernando stood near the bar, his face ashen, silently mouthing what might have been a prayer or a curse. The chair across from Dante scraped against the floor as I pulled it out. The leather was still warm from the last person who'd sat here, probably some business executive who'd paid a fortune for the privilege. I lowered myself into it, my spine rigid, my hands folded in my lap to hide their shaking. You're afraid of me. Another observation, delivered without inflection. Yes, I admitted, because lying seemed more dangerous than truth. Good. He cut into his bistecca, the knife slicing through flesh with practiced ease. Blood welled up, and I looked away. Fear keeps you honest. Tell me about Napoli. The abrupt topic shift disoriented me. I've never been. My grandmother left when she was young, during the war. She married an American soldier, came here, never went back. But she taught you the language. Some of it. Phrases, songs, recipes mostly. I could still hear Nonna's voice, warbling and warm, teaching me to make braciole in her tiny kitchen that always smelled like garlic and basil. She died 5 years ago. I'm sorry. And impossibly, he sounded like he meant it. He took a bite of steak, chewing slowly, his gaze never leaving my face. It was unnerving, being studied like this, like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. The wine glowed ruby in the candlelight as he lifted the glass, inhaled, tasted. A sound of satisfaction rumbled in his chest. Your grandmother would be proud, he said finally, that you kept her language alive, even a little. Many forget. They want to be American so badly they erase where they came from. Is that what you think? The question escaped before I could stop it. His eyebrow arched, dangerous amusement flickering in his expression. Careful, Gianna. You're getting brave. I'm sorry, I didn't mean, don't apologize. The command was sharp. I asked what you think. Own your words. I swallowed hard. I think people do what they have to do to survive. Sometimes that means forgetting. Sometimes that means remembering. Neither one is wrong. Silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. His rings caught the light as he set down his fork, and I noticed for the first time that one of them bore a crest, a lion with a crown, encircled by Latin words I couldn't read. You're right, he said softly. Survival requires sacrifice. Tell me, Gianna Russo, what have you sacrificed? The question felt like a hand reaching into my chest, squeezing my heart. How did he know? How could he possibly see through me so clearly? Everything, I whispered before I could stop myself. I've sacrificed everything. His eyes darkened with something that might have been recognition, or sympathy, or hunger. I couldn't tell which was more frightening. There's a man, he said, his voice dropping lower, intimate despite the public setting. Marco Benedetti. You know this name. My blood turned to slush. How? I know many things, Gianna. Marco Benedetti stole from me. A shipment of merchandise, worth $500,000. He thought he was clever, covering his tracks, disappearing into the wind. But men like him always leave trails. And those trails led me here, to this restaurant, tonight. No, this couldn't be happening. I don't know where he is, I stammered, panic rising like vomit. He left 3 years ago. He left me with his debts, with bills I can't pay, with... I stopped myself before I mentioned Sophia. Every maternal instinct screamed not to give this dangerous man any more ammunition, any more leverage. But his expression had already shifted, pieces clicking into place behind those calculating eyes. With a child, not a question, a confirmation. He left you with his child and his debts. Tears burned my eyes. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't give him that. She's mine, I said fiercely. Not his. Mine. And she has nothing to do with whatever Marco stole from you. No, Dante agreed, taking another sip of wine. completely calm while my world crumbled. She doesn't. But his debts are yours now, aren't they? The collectors come to your door, the calls, the threats, you're drowning in what he left behind. How did he know all this? Had he been watching me? Following me? The thought made my skin crawl with violation and something uncomfortably close to dark fascination. I'm working, I said desperately. I'm paying what I can. Not to me, you're not. He leaned forward, and the restaurant disappeared, the world narrowing to just his face, his voice, the terrible gravity of his presence. Marco stole from me. That debt transfers to blood, his blood. Your blood. Your daughter's blood. No. The word ripped from my throat. Please, she's just a child. She's innocent. I know. His hand moved across the table, and I flinched, but he didn't touch me. His fingers stopped an inch from mine, close enough that I could feel the heat of his skin. I'm not a monster, Gianna, despite what you've heard. I don't hurt children. I don't hurt innocents who had no part in the crime. Then what do you want? My voice broke. His smile was slow, predatory, and absolutely terrifying in its beauty. You. The word hung between us like a blade. You speak Italian. You have your grandmother's blood, her recipes, her traditions. And you need protection, money, a way out of the drowning. His fingers moved closer, not quite touching, a whisper away. I'll clear Marco's debt, all of it. Every dollar, every threat, gone. I'll make sure no collector ever darkens your door again. I'll make sure your daughter has everything she needs. School, clothes, a future. My heart was a war drum. In exchange for what? You come work for me, in my home, as a personal chef. You cook the meals your nonna taught you. You keep my house running. You're there when I need you. It sounded reasonable, almost too reasonable, and I pressed, because men like him never offered something for nothing. His smile widened, sharp as broken glass. And you belong to me, completely. You live where I say, you go where I permit, you speak to who I allow, your freedom, Gianna, in exchange for your daughter's security. A cage. He was offering me a golden cage. I can't. You can. His hand finally closed around mine, and electricity shot up my arm, hot and shocking. His skin was warm, scarred, powerful. You will, because the alternative is that Marco's debt comes due, and collectors aren't as patient as I am. They'll take everything. Your apartment, your savings, your wages, and when that's not enough, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. I thought of Sophia, her small hand in mine, her laugh like bells, her trust that Mommy would always keep her safe. I thought of the bills, the threats, the slow suffocation of debt I couldn't escape. I thought of this man, this beautiful, terrible man, who somehow saw me when everyone else looked through me. How long? I whispered. Until the debt is satisfied. 1 year. Maybe 2. His thumb stroked across my knuckles, a gesture that should have been comforting but felt like possession. I'm not cruel, Gianna. You'll have your own room, your own space. You'll be compensated, fed, protected. All I ask is your presence, your cooking, your company, when I require it. The word dripped with implications I didn't want to examine. I need to think. No. His grip tightened, not painful, but immovable. You decide now, tonight. Before I leave this restaurant, you tell me yes or no. Because if it's no, Gianna, I walk away. And Marco's debts become your problem again, in ways you won't enjoy. It wasn't a choice. Not really. It was surrender dressed up as negotiation. I looked into his eyes, those dark, fathomless eyes that held secrets and violence and something that might have been loneliness. And I knew I was already caught, had been caught from the moment I said buonasera, from the moment he'd decided I was worth noticing. Can I bring Sophia? My voice was barely audible. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly masked. The child lives with you? She's my daughter. Where I go, she goes. That's non-negotiable. For a long moment, he just stared at me. And I wondered if I'd pushed too far, if I'd just signed both our death warrants with my maternal defiance. Then, impossibly, he laughed. a low, rough sound that transformed his face into something almost human. "You have spine, Gianna Russo. I appreciate that." He released my hand, but the ghost of his touch remained. "Yes, bring the child. I have space. She'll be safe, protected. No harm will come to either of you in my house. You have my word." "And what's the word of a mobster worth?" The question escaped before I could cage it. The humor vanished from his expression, replaced by something cold and absolute. "Everything," he said quietly. "When I give my word, it's iron, it's blood, it's sacred. Break your promises if you like, Gianna. I'll forgive much from you, but I never break mine. Ever." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. "Okay," I heard myself say, the word falling from my lips like a stone into dark water. "Okay, yes, I'll do it." His smile returned, victorious and possessive. "Good girl." He stood, the chair scraping back, his bodyguards immediately alert. He pulled out a sleek black card from his jacket, placed it on the table beside his half-finished meal. "Give your notice tomorrow. Pack what you need. Someone will collect you Friday evening at 7. The address is on the card." "That's only a week." "Yes." He buttoned his jacket with practiced elegance. "I don't believe in long goodbyes, Gianna. They give people time to change their minds. To run. You won't run from me." It wasn't a question. He moved around the table, stopping beside my chair. This close, I could smell his cologne again. Could feel the heat radiating from his body. Could see the faint scar along his jaw that suggested violence survived. His hand touched my chin, tilting my face up, forcing me to meet his eyes. "One more thing," he murmured, his accent thicker now, his voice silk and threat combined. "While you're in my house, under my protection, you're mine. That means no other men, no dating, no flirting, no sharing what belongs to me. Understood?" My breath caught. I wasn't understood. Firmer now. "Yes," I whispered. "Ben." His thumb brushed across my lower lip, a touch so intimate it felt like a brand. "I'll see you Friday, Gianna. Don't disappoint me." Then he was gone, striding toward the exit with his bodyguards flanking him, the restaurant slowly exhaling as the door closed behind them. The rain continued its assault on the windows, and somewhere a glass shattered in the kitchen, and I sat frozen in the chair, his card burning in my palm. I'd just sold myself to the devil. And the terrifying thing was, part of me wasn't sorry. The week passed in a blur of sleepless nights and mechanical motions. I gave my notice to Fernando, who looked simultaneously relieved and horrified, like he couldn't decide if I was being rescued or sacrificed. Maria hugged me goodbye with tears in her eyes, pressing a saint's medal into my palm and whispering prayers I didn't believe would help. I told Sophia we were moving to a nicer place, somewhere safer, with a big yard where she could play. Her 5-year-old eyes lit up with excitement, unmarred by the weight of what I'd actually agreed to. She didn't need to know that her mother had become property, collateral, a debt payment wrapped in skin and submission. Friday arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. At 6:30, I stood in our tiny apartment, soon-to-be former apartment, surrounded by boxes and suitcases that contained our entire lives. The walls were bare, marked with rectangles of less faded paint where pictures had hung. Sophia's toys were packed away, her favorite blanket clutched in her small hands as she sat on the worn couch, swinging her legs and humming a song from daycare. She looked so small, so vulnerable. What had I done? The burner phone Dante had included with his card buzzed. A single message. 5 minutes. My stomach twisted into knots. I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror one last time. Jeans, a simple sweater, my hair down because I didn't have the energy to style it. I looked tired, afraid, but I also looked determined, and maybe that was enough. The knock came precisely at 7. I opened the door to find a man standing in the hallway, not one of the bodyguards from the restaurant, but someone new. He was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. His suit was impeccable, his posture military straight. "Ms. Russo." His voice was gravelly, respectful. "I'm Luca. Mr. Salvatore sent me to collect you and your daughter. Will he be there when we arrive? Something that might have been sympathy flickered in Luca's expression. He's currently handling business. He'll return later this evening. He glanced past me at Sophia, and his features softened almost imperceptibly. We should go. The car is downstairs. The car was a black SUV with tinted windows, idling at the curb like a sleek predator. Another man sat in the driver's seat, barely visible through the darkened glass. Luca helped us load the boxes and suitcases into the trunk with efficient care, then opened the back door for us. Sophia climbed in with wide-eyed wonder, running her hands over the leather seats. Mama, it's so soft. And there's TVs. Small screens were embedded in the front seat backs, currently dark. The interior smelled like leather and something else. Power, maybe, or money so old it had its own scent. I buckled Sophia into the middle seat, then took my place beside her, my hands clasped tight in my lap. Luca settled into the passenger seat. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word. We drove through the city as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Sophia pressed her face to the window, watching the buildings grow taller and then smaller, the neighborhoods shifting from rundown to modest to wealthy. We crossed the bridge over the harbor, and I caught a glimpse of the water below, dark, endless, hiding secrets in its depths. Like the car that had gone down with the councilman inside. I shivered and pulled Sophia closer. Mr. Salvatore's estate is about 30 minutes outside the city, Luca said, not turning around. It's very secure, gated, guarded. You and your daughter will be safe there. Safe. The word felt strange applied to the home of a man who ordered people killed with the casualness most people ordered coffee. What exactly will I be doing? I asked quietly, mindful of Sophia's presence. He said cooking, but you'll prepare his meals primarily. Mr. Salvatore has particular tastes. He prefers home-cooked Italian food, traditional recipes, the kind his mother used to make. Luca's voice held an odd note of nostalgia. He's had private chefs before, but they never lasted. Too formal, too fancy. He wants comfort, authenticity. Your grandmother's recipes, that's what he's looking for. It seemed almost too mundane, too normal for a man like Dante Salvatore. And the rest of the time? Now Luca did turn slightly, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror's reflection. You'll be available when he needs you. Conversation, mostly. Company. He works long hours, has few people he trusts enough to relax around. He wants someone who can speak his language, understand his heritage, someone who isn't afraid to be real with him. But I was afraid. Terrified, actually. We left the city behind, entering countryside that grew increasingly rural, increasingly isolated. Tall trees lined the road, their bare branches reaching toward the darkening sky like skeletal fingers. Stone walls appeared, old and moss-covered, marking property boundaries that stretched for what seemed like miles. Then we turned onto a private road, stopped at a gate that looked like it belonged to a fortress. Armed guards emerged from a booth, and I instinctively pulled Sophia closer, my hand over her eyes so she wouldn't see the guns. Luca spoke to them in rapid Italian, too fast for me to follow. The gates swung open with mechanical precision. The driveway wound through manicured grounds, past gardens that probably exploded with color in spring, but now lay dormant and brown. Security cameras perched like ravens on stone posts. More guards patrolled in pairs, their faces hard and watchful. Then the house came into view, and my breath caught. It wasn't a house. It was a mansion. A sprawling estate of gray stone and tall windows, 3 stories high with wings extending in both directions. Ivy climbed the walls in places, giving it an old-world elegance that spoke of money so established it didn't need to shout. Lights glowed warm in several windows, and smoke curled from one of the chimneys, disappearing into the night sky. It looked like something from a fairy tale, the kind where the girl gets trapped in the castle with the beast. Home, Luca said simply, as the SUV pulled up to the front entrance. Sophia was already unbuckling herself, pressing against the window. Mama, look. It's like a princess house. If only she knew what kind of prince ruled this castle. The front door opened as we stepped out, and a woman emerged, older, maybe 60, with gray hair pulled into a neat bun, and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She wore a simple dress and cardigan, looking more like someone's grandmother than staff in a mobster's house. "Benvenuta," she said warmly, descending the stone steps. "Welcome. I'm Teresa. I manage the household here." Her gaze dropped to Sophia, and her smile widened. "And who is this beautiful girl?" "Sophia," my daughter answered before I could, her shyness evaporating in the face of Teresa's warmth. "I'm 5. Well, almost 5.5. Almost 5.5. Such a big girl." Teresa's English carried a thick accent, heavier than Dante's. "Come inside, both of you. It's cold, and dinner is waiting." She ushered us through the front door into an entryway that stole my breath. Marble floors reflected the light from a chandelier that probably cost more than my entire life. A grand staircase curved upward to the second floor, the banister carved from dark wood that gleamed with polish. Oil paintings lined the walls, landscapes, portraits, scenes from old Italy, and fresh flowers perfumed the air from a vase on the central table. "Your rooms are upstairs," Teresa said, already moving toward the staircase. Luca and the driver brought our boxes in, carrying them with ease. "Mr. Salvatore requested adjoining suites. You'll have your own bathroom, sitting room, everything you need. Sophia's room connects to yours." We climbed the stairs, Sophia's hand tight in mine, both of us gawking at the opulence surrounding us. The second-floor hallway stretched long, with doors on both sides, more paintings, more evidence of wealth beyond comprehension. Teresa opened a door near the end of the hall, and we entered what she'd called my suite. It was bigger than my entire apartment. A large bedroom with a 4-poster bed dressed in cream linens, thick rugs over hardwood floors, windows with heavy drapes currently drawn against the night, a sitting area with a couch and chairs arranged before a fireplace, a desk, a wardrobe large enough to walk inside, fresh flowers on the nightstand, and through another door, Sophia's room, painted soft yellow, with a bed fit for a princess, a toy chest already filled with new toys, stuffed animals arranged on shelves, and a window seat with cushions overlooking the gardens. My daughter's squeal of delight echoed through the rooms. "Is all this for me?" She spun in circles, her worn blanket forgotten on the floor. "All for you, Piccola," Teresa confirmed, her eyes twinkling. "Mr. Salvatore wanted you to be comfortable." I couldn't speak, couldn't process the disconnect between what I knew Dante was and the kindness embedded in these gestures. Monsters didn't buy toys for little girls, didn't ensure their mothers had sitting rooms and fireplaces, did they? "Let me show you the rest," Teresa said, leading us back through my room to another door that opened into a bathroom that belonged in a spa. Marble everywhere, a tub deep enough to swim in, a shower with multiple heads, towels so thick and soft they felt like clouds. "Teresa," I finally managed, my voice unsteady. "This is too much. We don't need—" Mr. Salvatore was very clear about his expectations, her expression gentled. "You're not servants here, Gianna. You're guests, protected guests. He wants you comfortable, safe, cared for." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He can be harsh in business, yes. Dangerous when crossed. But in his home, with those under his protection, he's different. You'll see." Would I? Or was this just the gilded surface over a darker truth? "Dinner is in 30 minutes, Teresa continued. "I'll send someone to help Sophia get settled while you freshen up. Mr. Salvatore should return around 9. He'll want to see you then, in his study." My stomach clenched. "Just me?" "Just you. Sophia can stay with me in the kitchen. I make excellent cookies, and I suspect she'd like to help." Teresa winked at my daughter, who was already nodding enthusiastically. After Teresa left, I helped Sophia explore her new room, putting away her clothes in drawers that dwarfed our meager belongings, setting her favorite stuffed rabbit on the bed, pretending everything was normal, while my heart raced with anticipation and dread. At 8:30, a young woman named Maria, not my Maria from the restaurant, but someone new, came to collect Sophia. My daughter went willingly, already chattering about cookie decorating, not realizing she was leaving her mother to face the wolf alone. I changed into the only nice dress I owned. Simple black, appropriate for serving tables, probably inappropriate for whatever was about to happen. My hands shook as I tried to fix my hair, settling finally for leaving it down, my grandmother's silver cross visible at my throat. At precisely 9, someone knocked. Luca stood in the hallway. "Mr. Salvatore is ready for you." I followed him through the mansion, down the stairs, through hallways lined with more art and evidence of old money and older violence. We stopped before a heavy wooden door, and Luca knocked twice before opening it. "Ms. Russo, sir." The study was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves stuffed with volumes in multiple languages, a massive desk with multiple computer monitors, and a fireplace crackling with real flames. The room smelled like smoke and cedar and him. Dante stood by the window, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in rapid Italian, his voice hard and cold. Nothing like the controlled politeness he'd shown me at the restaurant. I caught words I recognized: money, shipment, problem, solution, and others that went over my head. Then he turned, saw me, and the hardness melted slightly. "Devo andare," he said into the phone. "Si. Handle it." He ended the call, tossed the phone onto his desk, and gave me his full attention. He'd changed since the restaurant: dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with more scars. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked tired, dangerous, and impossibly magnetic. "Gianna." My name was a caress in his mouth. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might try to run." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "Pack your daughter in the night. Disappear. Take your chances with Marco's other creditors." "I gave you my word." "Yes." He stopped directly in front of me, near enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "You did. And unlike most people, you kept it. I appreciate that." His hand lifted, and I froze. But he only touched the cross at my throat, his fingers brushing my skin with surprising gentleness. "Your grandmother's?" "Yes, she would be proud of you. Protecting your daughter, doing what's necessary to survive." His eyes met mine, and in their depths I saw understanding that shouldn't exist in a man like him. "I know what it's like, Gianna, to sacrifice everything for family, to make choices that damn you so others can be saved. Is that what you tell yourself?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "That everything you do is for family?" I expected anger, violence even. Instead, he smiled, small, sad, genuine. "No," he said quietly. "Most of what I do is for power, control, revenge, the things that keep me alive in a world that wants me dead." His thumb pressed gently against the cross, and through it, against my racing pulse. "But family? That's the only thing I don't justify, Gianna. That's the only pure thing left in my corrupted world. And now you're part of that world, you and Sophia. We're not your family. We're your—" "What?" His eyebrow arched, dangerous amusement returning. "My prisoners, my employees, my property, all of those felt true, and none of them felt complete." "I don't know what we are," I admitted. "Then let me clarify." He released the cross, but his hand moved to cut my face, his palm warm against my cheek. "You're under my protection now. That makes you mine in ways you don't yet understand. No one touches you without my permission. No one threatens you without answering to me. You're safe here, Gianna. Safer than you've ever been. And what do you get in return?" His smile turned predatory. "Everything I want." Before I could respond, before I could breathe, he stepped back, releasing me, the sudden absence of his touch leaving me cold. "Teresa will show you the kitchen tomorrow. You'll begin cooking the day after, once you're settled. Make what your nonna taught you. I'm not particular about specific dishes, just authenticity." He moved to his desk, already shifting back into business mode. "If you need anything, clothes for Sophia, supplies for cooking, anything at all, tell Teresa. Cost isn't a concern. Dante?" He looked up sharply at my use of his first name, something flickering in his expression. "Thank you," I finished quietly. "For the rooms, the toys, for being kind to Sophia." His features softened almost imperceptibly. "I told you, Gianna, I don't hurt innocents. Your daughter did nothing wrong. She deserves a childhood, safety, happiness. I can provide that." He paused. Unlike her father, the mention of Marco sent ice through my veins. "What will you do when you find him?" "Does it matter? He's still Sophia's father. She doesn't remember him well, but he abandoned her." Dante's voice went cold, absolute. "Left her with debts and dangers he created. Whatever happens to Marco Benedetti, he earned it 1,000 times over. Don't waste your sympathy on men who don't deserve it." He was right. I knew he was right. But something about the casual way he discussed violence, the certainty that Marco's fate was sealed, made my stomach turn. "Can I go?" I asked, suddenly exhausted. "Check on Sophia?" "She's asleep in the kitchen, full of cookies and Teresa's stories." His lips quirked. "But yes, go. Rest. Tomorrow we establish routines." His eyes held mine, heavy with unspoken implications. "And you begin learning what it means to be mine." I fled before he could say anything else, before the weight of his gaze could pin me there forever. The first week in Dante's mansion passed in a strange dream state, where luxury and danger blended until I couldn't distinguish between comfort and captivity. Each morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked gardens slowly awakening from winter's grip. Sophia adapted with the resilience of children, running through hallways that echoed with her laughter, playing in rooms filled with toys she'd never imagined owning. Teresa doted on her, teaching her Italian words and letting her help in the kitchen, their bond forming naturally while I navigated the minefield of my new existence. I cooked. That became my anchor, the one thing that made sense. Dante's kitchen was a chef's paradise. Professional-grade appliances, marble countertops, every tool and ingredient imaginable. I made the dishes Nonna had taught me. Braciole rolled with pine nuts and raisins, pasta alla Genovese that simmered for hours, saltimbocca that melted on the tongue. I baked bread from scratch, filling the house with yeast and warmth. I prepared sfogliatelle for breakfast, their layers crispy and perfect. And every evening, Dante ate what I made with an intensity that felt almost devotional. He rarely spoke during meals, but I felt his attention like a physical touch. The way he closed his eyes after the first bite, the subtle relaxation in his shoulders, the ghost of a smile when flavors transported him somewhere else. Somewhere, I suspected, that involved his own grandmother, his own lost innocence. We didn't speak much those first days. He was often gone, disappearing for hours or entire days, returning with blood on his knuckles that he washed away before dinner. I learned not to ask questions, learned to exist in the spaces he created, filling them with cooking and caring for Sophia, and pretending I wasn't constantly aware of his presence even when he wasn't there. But on the 8th night, everything shifted. I'd just put Sophia to bed, tucking her in with her worn rabbit and the new stuffed giraffe Teresa had given her. She'd fallen asleep mid-sentence, exhausted from a day of playing in the garden under Luca's watchful eye. I kissed her forehead, breathing in her little girl's scent of soap and innocence, and felt my heart crack with love and fear in equal measure. She was happy here, safe, cared for, and I'd sold my soul to give her that. I was heading back to my room when I heard the music. It drifted from somewhere downstairs, classical and melancholy, piano notes that spoke of longing and loss. I followed the sound without thinking, my feet carrying me through the darkened hallways, until I found myself outside the study. The door was cracked open, warm light spilled out, and with it, the scent of whiskey and smoke. I should have walked away, should have returned to my gilded cage and pretended I hadn't heard anything. Instead, I knocked softly. "Come in, Gianna." How did he always know it was me? I pushed the door open. Dante sat in one of the leather chairs by the fire, a crystal glass in his hand, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hair disheveled. The music came from an old record player in the corner, the kind with actual vinyl, the sound warm and alive in a way digital never managed. He looked tired, human almost. "Can't sleep?" he asked, not looking at me. Sophia had nightmares earlier. I wanted to make sure she was settled. I hesitated in the doorway, uncertain. I heard the music. Puccini. My mother loved him. He took a sip of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the firelight. She used to play his operas while she cooked. Said the music made the food taste better, that it added soul to every dish. I moved closer, drawn by something in his voice. A vulnerability I hadn't heard before. What happened to her? Cancer. 10 years ago. His jaw tightened. She suffered for months, wasting away while I watched, helpless. I could buy anything, threaten anyone, but I couldn't stop her dying. The raw pain in those words made my chest ache. I'm sorry. Don't be. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were darker than usual, haunted. She died knowing I was exactly what she'd feared I'd become, a monster, a killer. The thing my father raised me to be. You're not. Don't lie to me, Gianna. His voice went sharp. You know what I am. You've seen the blood, heard the rumors. I've killed men, ordered deaths, built an empire on violence and fear. My mother died ashamed of her son. I should have agreed, should have backed away from this crack in his armor, this glimpse of the broken thing underneath all that power. Instead, I sat down in the chair across from him. My nonna used to say that no one is just one thing, I said quietly, that we're all contradictions, saints and sinners mixed together. You're a killer, yes, but you're also the man who filled my daughter's room with toys, who ensures Teresa has everything she needs to care for us, who closes his eyes when he eats my cooking, because it reminds you of your mother's love. His hand tightened around the glass. You see what you want to see. No, I see what's there. I leaned forward, emboldened by darkness and music, and the strange intimacy of this moment. You want me to be afraid of you. Everyone's afraid of you. But fear and truth aren't the same thing. For a long moment, he just stared at me, and I wondered if I'd pushed too far, if I'd just shattered whatever fragile protection my usefulness provided. Then he laughed. Soft, surprised, genuine. You're either very brave or very foolish, Gianna Russo. Maybe both. He stood, setting his glass on the side table, and moved to the record player. The Puccini faded, replaced by something slower, more intimate. When he turned back, his expression had shifted into something I couldn't quite read. Dance with me. My breath caught. What? Dance. With me. He extended his hand, and it wasn't a request despite the polite phrasing. Your nonna taught you to cook. Did she teach you to dance? A little. At weddings, family gatherings. I stared at his outstretched hand like it might burn me. Dante, don't think. He stepped closer, and suddenly his hand was on my waist, pulling me to my feet, drawing me against him before I could protest. His other hand captured mine, warm and firm, and then we were moving, swaying to music that spoke of yearning and surrender. I'd never been this close to him, never felt the full heat of his body, the controlled strength in every movement, the way his hand pressed against the small of my back like he was claiming that space. His cologne surrounded me, and underneath it, something essentially him, smoke and danger, and a darkness that should have terrified me, but instead made my pulse race for entirely different reasons. You're tense, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. You're a dangerous man holding me too close. Would you prefer I hold you at a distance? Yes. No, I didn't know anymore. His hand moved slightly, fingers splaying across my back, and I felt that touch everywhere. A brand, a promise, a threat. We moved together in the firelight, the world reduced to music and heartbeats, and the terrible magnetic pull between us that defied logic and self-preservation. Why did you really bring me here? I whispered against his shoulder. The truth, Dante. Not the debt, not the cooking. Why me? His hand tightened on mine. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Because when you spoke to me in Italian, he said finally, his voice rough. When you looked at me without cowering, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. Authenticity. Kindness. A life that wasn't soaked in blood. He pulled back slightly, forcing me to meet his eyes. You remind me of who I might have been. In another life, before my father's fists and my family's business and the weight of this empire turned me into something inhuman. The confession hung between us, raw and vulnerable and more intimate than any physical touch could be. You're not inhuman, I said, my free hand moving without permission to rest against his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath my palm. You're just hurt and scared, and so So lonely. His eyes darkened with something fierce and hungry. Careful, Gianna. You're seeing past my walls. That's dangerous for both of us. Why? Because once I let someone in, I don't let them go. His hand left my back, moving to cup my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. I warned you at the restaurant. You're mine now. And I'm a possessive man, Tesoro. Obsessive, even. If you keep looking at me like that, keep speaking truths no one else dares, I won't be able to maintain the distance I promised. My heart was a drum, my breath shallow. What distance? The one that keeps you safe from me. His thumb traced my cheekbone, his gaze dropping to my mouth. The one that lets you stay in your room, untouched, free to leave when the debt is paid. Because if I cross that line, Gianna, if I take what I want, you'll never be free of me. Never. I should have stepped back. Should have run to my room and locked the door and reminded myself that this man was a killer, a monster, someone who destroyed lives without hesitation. But all I could think about was the loneliness in his eyes, the vulnerability hidden beneath layers of violence, the way he held me like I was something precious despite all the blood on his hands. Maybe I don't want distance, I heard myself whisper. His control shattered like glass. His mouth crashed against mine, hungry and desperate and absolutely consuming. I gasped, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't exist as anything separate from him. His hand fisted in my hair, tilting my head back, claiming me with a possessiveness that should have terrified me, but instead ignited something I'd thought long dead. I kissed him back. God help me! I kissed him back with everything I had, my hands clutching his shirt, pulling him closer even as some distant part of my brain screamed warnings I couldn't hear over the roaring in my blood. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard, his forehead resting against mine, his hands trembling slightly where they gripped my waist. Gianna, he breathed, my name a prayer and a curse. Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't want this. I couldn't. Because the truth was more terrifying than any lie. I did want this. Wanted him. Despite the danger. Despite the impossibility. Despite everything logic and survival instinct screamed at me. I can't. I admitted, my voice breaking. His smile was dark triumph and tender devastation combined. Then you're mine, Tesoro. Completely, irrevocably mine. And I'll burn the world to keep you. He kissed me again. Softer this time, but no less consuming, and I surrendered to the inevitable. I'd just fallen for the devil himself, and there was no going back. Everything changed after that night. Yet somehow, nothing changed at all. I still woke early to prepare breakfast, still spent afternoons in the kitchen creating the meals that seemed to anchor Dante to something human. Sophia still played in the gardens under watchful eyes, still laughed with Teresa over cookie dough and Italian lessons. The routines remained the same, but now, when Dante returned from whatever dark business kept him away, he'd find me, a hand on my lower back as he passed through the kitchen, his fingers brushing mine when I served his dinner, the weight of his gaze following me through rooms like a physical touch. And at night, after Sophia slept, I'd find myself in his study, talking until dawn about everything and nothing, his mother's recipes, my grandmother's stories, the lives we'd lived before violence and desperation reshaped us into these broken, desperate versions of ourselves. We didn't cross the line again, not completely. He'd kiss me. Long, devastating kisses that left me trembling. But he never pushed for more, as if holding himself back from some final claim that would shatter whatever fragile balance we'd created. I want you willing, he'd told me one night, his mouth hot against my throat. Not just surrendered, but wanting this as much as I do. No doubts, Gianna. No regrets. I was falling in love with him. The realization came slowly, then all at once. This dangerous, damaged man who killed without hesitation, but who'd spent an entire afternoon building a dollhouse with my daughter, because she'd mentioned wanting one, who'd eliminated all of Marco's debts without fanfare, who'd arranged for Sophia's enrollment in the city's best private school, who looked at me like I was salvation and damnation wrapped in skin. 3 weeks into my new life, the fragile peace shattered. I was in the kitchen preparing osso buco when Luca burst through the door, his usual composure fractured by urgency. Where's Mr. Salvatore? In his study, on a call. Get Sophia. Lock yourselves in your room. Don't come out until I come for you." His hand moved to his jacket, to the weapon I tried to pretend wasn't there. "Now, Gianna." Terror flooded my veins. "What's happening?" "Marco Benedetti. He's been spotted in the city asking questions about you. About where you went." Luca's jaw tightened. "He knows you're here. And he's not alone." The wooden spoon fell from my hand, clattering against the tile. Marco. After 3 years of silence, of abandonment, he'd suddenly decided I mattered, that Sophia mattered. He can't. He has no right. Rights don't matter to desperate men. Luca was already moving toward the door. "Get your daughter. Now." I ran. Through hallways that suddenly felt too long, too exposed, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sophia was in the garden with Teresa, both of them kneeling by the flower beds, examining early spring bulbs pushing through soil. "Sophia," my voice cracked. "Come here, baby. We need to go inside." She looked up, confusion clouding her features. "But Mama, Teresa is showing me." Now, the sharpness in my tone made her flinch. But she came, her small hand finding mine. Teresa rose, understanding already dawning in her eyes. "The safe room?" "My room. Luca's orders." We moved quickly, Teresa staying close, her presence somehow steadying my panic. We'd almost reached the stairs when I heard it, shouting from the front of the house, male voices raised in anger and threat, and beneath it all, one voice I'd tried to forget, but still recognized instantly. "Marco, I know she's here. Gianna, get out here, you stupid bitch. You think you can hide from me? You think he can protect you?" Sophia's hand tightened in mine, her eyes wide with fear. "Mama, who?" "No one, baby. Just someone confused." I picked her up despite her being almost too big for it, her legs wrapping around my waist as I carried her up the stairs. "Teresa, stay with her. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except Luca or Dante." "Where are you going?" Teresa demanded, already knowing the answer, already disapproving. "To end this." "Gianna, no." But I was already moving back toward the stairs, toward the confrontation I'd avoided for 3 years, toward the man who'd destroyed my life and now threatened the fragile new one I'd built. The entrance hall had become a war zone. 6 men stood just inside the door, Marco and 5 others I didn't recognize, all armed, all radiating the desperate energy of cornered animals. Dante's security had them surrounded, weapons drawn, a dozen guns pointed at Marco's crew from multiple angles, and in the center of it all stood Dante, utterly calm, his hands loose at his sides, his expression carved from ice. "You have 10 seconds to leave my property before my men turn you into a stain on my marble." His voice was quiet, conversational, more terrifying than any shout could be. "I suggest you use them wisely." Marco laughed, wild, unhinged, the sound of a man with nothing left to lose. He'd changed in 3 years, the handsome face I'd once loved now gaunt and hardened, his eyes bloodshot and manic. He looked like what he'd become, a bottom feeder in the criminal world, surviving on scraps and stupidity. "You think you scare me, Salvatore? I know what you want with Gianna. You think you can just take what's mine? Yours?" Dante's laugh was sharp as a blade. "The woman you abandoned with your debts and your child? The family you threw away like garbage? You have no claim here, Benedetti. She's my wife." The words hit me like a slap. "We were never married, Marco. We dated. You got me pregnant. You left. That's the extent of our relationship." Marco's eyes found me on the stairs, and hatred blazed there, mixed with something that might have been pain if I'd cared enough to look closely. "You moved on quick, didn't you? Found yourself a rich protector. Probably spread your legs the first night." Dante moved. One moment he was standing still, the next his fist connected with Marco's jaw with a crack that echoed through the hall. Marco went down hard, blood spraying from his mouth, his friends reaching for weapons only to freeze as a dozen guns cocked in response. Dante stood over Marco, his knuckles bloody, his expression empty of everything except cold purpose. "You don't speak about her." Each word was carved from ice. "You don't think about her. You don't breathe the same air as her. You're nothing, Benedetti. A thief, a coward, and a worthless father. The only reason you're still breathing is because killing you in front of her would upset her." But make no mistake, if you ever come near her or her daughter again, I'll take you apart piece by piece and make you beg for death long before I grant it." Marco spat blood, his laugh gurgling and broken. "You're going to kill me anyway. Why not now? Why not get it over with?" "Because—" Dante crouched down, his voice dropping to something intimate and terrible. "You don't get the mercy of a quick death. You get to live, Benedetti. You get to live knowing you had everything. A woman who loved you, a daughter who could have been yours, and you threw it away for quick money and cowardice. You get to watch from whatever hole you crawl into as she builds a life without you. As your daughter grows up calling another man father, as everything you could have been turns to ash because you weren't strong enough to deserve it." He stood, turned to his men. "Take them to the border, strip them of weapons, money, identification. Let them start over with nothing, the way they left Gianna, and spread the word. Anyone who employs them, helps them, gives them sanctuary, answers to me." It was a death sentence of another kind. In this world, without protection, without resources, Marco and his friends wouldn't last long. Marco was still laughing as they dragged him away, the sound echoing through the hall until the door closed, severing it abruptly. Silence fell, heavy and complete. Dante turned to face me, and the mask he'd worn dropped away, revealing something raw and possessive and almost frightened. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough. "No. Sofia is safe. Luca's with her." He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, closing the distance between us, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted the violence still staining his knuckles. "You shouldn't have come down. You should have stayed hidden." He was calling for me, threatening. "I couldn't just—" "Yes, you could have. You should have." His thumb traced my cheekbone, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that stole my breath. "Do you understand what it did to me? Seeing you walk down those stairs while armed men stood in my home, the thoughts that went through my head, the things I was prepared to do." "You didn't kill him. You could have, but you didn't, because you were watching." His forehead pressed against mine, his breath warm and unsteady. "Because I'm trying to be better than what I am. For you, for Sofia, for the life I want to build instead of the one I've been living." My hands found his shirt, clutching the fabric like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "Dante, I love you." The words fell between us like stones into still water, creating ripples that would never fade. "I love you, Gianna. I've loved you since you spoke to me in Italian, since you looked at me and saw something worth saving. I love your strength, your stubbornness, the way you love your daughter with everything you have. And I know it's too soon. I know I'm asking the impossible. But I need you to know." I kissed him, pulled him down and kissed him with everything I'd been holding back. Every fear and hope and desperate need tangled together. He made a sound low in his throat, his arms wrapping around me, lifting me slightly as he kissed me back with a fervor that spoke of forever and always and complete irrevocable surrender. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I whispered the truth I'd been avoiding. "I love you too. God help me. I love you too." His smile was sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Then marry me." My heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me, Gianna. Not because of debts or obligation or protection, though I'll protect you until my last breath, but because I want you as my wife, because I want to give Sofia the father she deserves, because I want to wake up every morning knowing you're mine and I'm yours, completely and without reservation." He kissed me again, soft and reverent. "Marry me." It was insane. Impossible. We'd known each other barely a month, and most of what I knew about him involved violence and danger, and a world I'd never wanted to be part of. But I also knew he'd built my daughter a dollhouse with his own scarred hands, that he closed his eyes when he ate my cooking, transported to memories of his mother's love, that he was trying, desperately, imperfectly, to be something other than the monster his father had created, that beneath all the violence and power lived a man who just wanted to be seen, to be loved, to matter to someone beyond what he could provide or threaten. "Yes," I heard myself say, "yes, I'll marry you." His kiss was celebration and possession, and promise all wrapped together. 6 months later, the garden wedding was small, just Teresa, Luca, a handful of Dante's most trusted men, and Sophia, who wore a white dress and carried flowers like the princess she'd become. No priest would marry us given Dante's reputation, so a judge he'd helped years ago officiated, his hands shaking slightly but his words clear and binding. I wore cream lace that Teresa had helped me choose, my grandmother's cross at my throat, and Dante's ring. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the summer sunlight and threw blue fire across my skin. When Dante lifted my veil, his eyes held tears he'd probably deny later. "My Gianna," he whispered. "Mine forever." "Yours forever," I agreed. Sophia shouted, "Kiss her!" with 5-year-old enthusiasm, and everyone laughed, the tension that usually surrounded Dante's world melting in the face of this small, perfect moment. He did kiss me, long and deep and absolutely inappropriate for the audience, but no one seemed to mind. That night, in the bedroom we now officially shared, he made love to me with a tenderness that shattered every remaining wall between us. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and moonlight, his hand traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "I'll never be perfect," he said quietly. "I'll still have to do dark things, make hard choices. This world I live in, I know." I turned to face him, my hand over his heart. "I'm not asking for perfect, Dante. I'm just asking for this, for you to keep trying, to keep choosing us, to keep being the man who builds dollhouses and cries at weddings." His laugh was soft, self-deprecating. I didn't cry. Your eyes were wet. Allergies. In summer? He kissed me to shut me up, and I let him, sinking into the promise of this impossible, perfect life we were building together. Sophia called him Papa now. She'd started it one morning at breakfast, the word slipping out naturally, and Dante had frozen, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth, tears actually spilling down his face before he'd pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Marco's debts were gone, his threats silenced. The man himself had disappeared into whatever hole Dante's mercy had granted him, and I tried not to think about it too often. This was my life now. Wife to a dangerous man, mother to a thriving daughter, maker of meals that brought tears to my husband's eyes and memories of his mother's love. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, wasn't safe or simple or remotely normal, but it was mine. And lying there in Dante's arms, his heartbeat steady beneath my palm, Sophia sleeping peacefully in the room next door, I realized something fundamental. Sometimes salvation comes wrapped in danger. Love comes from unexpected places, and the devil himself might have a soul worth saving. "Ti amo," I whispered against his skin. "Ti amo, mia regina," he murmured back, pulling me closer. My queen, my salvation, mine. And in the darkness of our shared room, in the safety of his arms, I finally let myself believe in happy endings, even the ones built on blood and desperation and impossible love. We'd both been broken before we found each other, but somehow, impossibly, we'd made each other whole.